Welcome back to the channel. Today we're in Paris to go through the Pompidou Museum together, a building that redefined the concept of museum and public space in Paris. Check the principles of the architectures of Richard Rogers and Renzo Piano, the precedents of the project, and how its structure works. Before going ahead, if you like the content, I would ask you for a like and subscribing to the channel. It really helps. We just surpassed the 15,000 subscribers mark, so I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of you who are already subscribed for your support and all of your comments. Italian-born with a British upbringing, when he was 6, his parents decided to move back to England. He studied in the Architectural Association School of London, where he would meet Norman Foster as well as his future first wife, Sue Bramwell. In 1963, Rogers, already married, founded together with his wife, Sue Rogers, Norman Foster, Wendy Foster and his sister, Georgie Cheeseman, the Team 4. The Team 4 partnership only lasted 4 years and built 3 projects. Probably the most recognizable one was the Crickveen House, a project located in Cornwall for the parents of Sue Rogers, where the 4 focused on a new architecture but still using traditional materials. It was the first domestic property to use GRP and is also praised for its progressive ventilation and energy conservation features. After the Team 4 period, already in partnership with his wife Sue, they developed 2 projects. The CPAP House, focusing on new industrialized materials, prefabricated components and a repetitive steel frame, with 2 glass facades and open-ended building, limitless and completely transparent. And the Wimbledon House, a project they did for Richard Rogers' parents with a similar language and focus on lightweight and industrial materials. This professional partnership lasted 3 years, between 1967 and 1970. The spirit of the architecture focused on the importance of technology and the positive influence this might have in the world, the social aspect and life of the building, on the democratic elements of the architecture. The architecture was politically conscious from early on, and he focuses on the responsibility of the architect to do a better society, to do a better city. The son of a builder, he got interested early on with the lyrical aspects of the architecture, how every element added a level to the fundamental. Focused on lightness and transparency and how those materials flirt, in his own words, with light and water. In 1964 he graduated as an architect and right away set his own studio in Genoa, Studio Piano. During those early years of his career he built several projects focusing on lightweight enclosures and tension structures, very often with repetitive and purpose-made components and the use of reinforced polyester, such as the IPE factory in 1968, the Milan Triennale, and the Osaka Pavilion in 1970. Besides working on his own projects, by 1968 Renzo Piano was a teaching assistant in Milan and worked briefly in the Louis Kahn studio. In 1971 he joined forces with Sue and Richard Rogers in a new partnership, Piano Rogers, and worked together on a very short list of projects. In the years in which their collaboration lasted, those were: the building was originally designed in 1969 for UOP, following the principles of the CPAP project. Flexibility, low cost, industrial materials and structure, it used bright colors, breaking completely from both current architectures but also existing industrial architectures. The Centre Pompidou Museum, of course. a pavilion for a company that shared clearly some common ground with the Pompidou, with conduits for heating and water painted in bright colors and exposed metal structure. The Institute for Research and Coordination in Acoustic/Music is placed east to the Pompidou. Was built in 3 phases. The first phase built upon the clear contrast between the existing context above ground and the life that would happen in boxes underground. The second phase added some natural light to that working basement, the visible head of the building, right on the corner. And the third and final phase included spaces from the old school and the municipal bathhouse to complete institute and further the spaces above ground. In order to achieve maximum flexibility with the partitions and subdivisions, they designed a system of lattice beams supporting a double roof with a ventilation void. The interior spaces are only interrupted by the enclosed service course. In addition to their own projects, there were some similarities the Pompidou had with other buildings and projects produced in Paris during the first 30 years of the 20th century. The originally intended removable floors recall those of the Maison du Peuple in Clichy by Jean Prouvé. The electronic facade present in the competition project, with its video screens and moving messages, resembles strongly the one present in the Maison de la Publicité project by Oskar Nitschke. Also, the display of mechanical components on the outside and transparency in the facade has a reference in the Maison de Beurre by Charot. And at last, some elements of the Maison Clarté by Le Corbusier in Genève and some Russian constructivism and French structuralism can be seen in the project. When the competition was called in 1969, France was immersed in a difficult and pivotal point, mostly socially, and had just left behind the protests of 1968. It was a period of ambiguity, a bit of an identity and confidence crisis was palpable. Coming from the 60s, the issues with the May of 68 across the country, but especially in Paris, with anti-Vietnam War, anti-capitalist, and against the conservative policies of the De Gaulle administration protests, shook not only French society but also made the De Gaulle's government and even the Fifth Republic contemplate a potential failure. It was a very Catholic, conservative and not very diversified society where the young generation was questioning their role and future in society, and socialism was intersecting with capitalism, like a clash between future and past. In the 60s, it was decided to move the market of Le Hall, a historically significant structure market in the city but already in a decaying phase, with the idea of building a cultural center in the area, hoping to renew Paris as a city of culture and art. That first option of replacing Le Hall was later shifted to the Plateau Beaubourg, a big urban space mostly used for parking cars. The competition was published and had 681 entries, with renowned architects of the size of Jean Prouvé, Niemeyer and Philip Johnson among the jury. Together with the Pompidou Centre that included a library, a design center and a modern art museum, the competition included an institute for contemporary music placed on the corner between the Rue Saint-Marie and the Stravinsky Square. The Piano Rogers entry was number 493 and the selection announcement happened in 1971. The entry from Piano and Rogers for the Centre was a response to that time in France, a disconnection from what could be considered a building for a president or what was commonly known as a museum, a separation from a marble container, an expression of the anti-monumentalism. The first lines of the competition read, "A place for all people, all ages, all creeds, for the poor and the rich, for the young and the old." The architects wanted to go away from intimidating spaces that would make any distinctions between people. We wanted a machine for people instead of a piece of marble. They took their principles and focused on a democratic space, flexible, transformable, mobile, bright and playful, as well as taking some inspiration from the imaginary of the Archicran group. An immense information and cultural center that supports itself on the principles of Rogers and Renzo Piano, transparency and technology. Because by turning the building inside out and making its skin invisible, one starts to think where the interior separates itself from the exterior. Also, the traditional concept of a facade with a main focalized view where the attention is focused disappears. The hierarchical concept of the Renaissance facade is not present here, resulting in egalitarian elevations in the volume, with the obvious exception of the escalators and the elevated streets facing the Piazza side, imitating the movement and life of citizens in the city, a reflection of society, an extension of the city. The project represents a big change in what Parisians could conceive of as a museum. Despite having witnessed already the Eiffel Tower in its day, the reaction was similar, with a first instinct of rejection. The element, however, with time integrates into the city tissue and grows with it. And besides supporting itself on technology and industrialization and being crowned as one of the most famous examples of the high-tech architecture, it is actually the opposite according to the architects. In the words of Renzo Piano, considering it high-tech is actually a mistake. It's a parody of high-tech architecture. If it were a spaceship, it would be one designed by Jules Verne, that is to say, one that would never fly. Opposed to filling up the full Plateau Beaubourg with the program for the competition, they took an inverse approach, kept the space for the people and made it as big as the building. They kept the Piazza as a theater of nature and a theater of life, a focus on the life that the public space brings to the city and the people. The most successful part of the building is not the building itself, but the public space they created for it, the square. They believed in the responsibility of the architect to do a better city, and by extension, by creating a better city, doing better citizens. The architects believe the public space is the essence of the city, so the building is a consequence of the piazza. And how the elevated streets of the museum and its escalators facing the piazza were an extension of the public space, part of the city. How people getting together in piazzas, parks and marketplaces builds a city. There is a social element plus a physical element in those spaces. The spatial concept of the structure of the project focuses on achieving completely clean and open from interruption spaces and disconnect them from functions, bringing flexibility to the relation between program and spaces. To achieve these open spaces, the architects decide to extract to the facade all structural functions and all services of the building. Structurally, the building rests on 14 porticos with spaces distributed in 6 heights. Each portico consists of trusses with spans of approximately 45 meters which work together with the cantilevered gerberets at the ends to reduce deflections. This system of compression tension was designed by Peter Rice, a brilliant engineer who was part of the Pompidou Centre design team and who had previously worked with John Hudson at the Sydney Opera House and of course would work after with Piano and Rogers in other projects. He provided not only technical expertise, but his skills were so vast and deep and also had the vision and strategic perspective to execute the project that building it without his input wouldn't have been possible. The porticos are supported by two 800mm diameter pillars which work in compression, and the cantilevered structures are used to counteract those stresses of the main section, making the external cables in the facade work under tension. The porticos of the short facades have bracings as reinforcement that connect the trusses of the different levels and are visible from the outside. The entire building is designed as a set of prefabricated pieces that are assembled on site. In the facades, additional braces are placed, as well as all the structural supports necessary to hang the escalators and horizontal communications. In addition, the metal structure that supports the building would not comply with the local fire regulation if it wasn't for the fact that the main pillars are cooled by water inside each one of them. By the way, if you're interested in purchasing this exact 3D model, it is available through CGTRADER. I would like to thank G-Man for allowing me to use it for the video. I will leave a link to his profile and file in the description below. On top of each truss, the slabs for each level are placed and the transparent spaces are closed with curtain walls. This open plan and transparent design, which might be reminiscent of the industrial architectures of Mies van der Rohe, remained in use for approximately 15 years, until a slight update led to switching to a box-in-a-box design for the museum levels and a much more natural light-controlled environment. With regards to conduits and building services and communications, they are visible and proudly arranged both inside and outside and identified with bright colors. Blue for air flows, yellow for electricity, green for water circuits, red for pedestrian flows. And if I had to summarize the building as bullet points: leaving the public space untouched, the Piazza, the disconnection between traditional museum spaces and the proposal from Rogers and Piano, a new expression based on technology, transparency and social interaction, the streets in the air, and structural expression, not only function. And this is the end of the video. I hope you really enjoyed the overview of the building today. For 2022, I'm setting myself to upload much more content and more often, so don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.